Hi, Simon. How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good, thanks. So look, I'm really keen to talk to you about security architecture. It's great you've come to talk to us. I just want to make it clear, and you can as well, that this is Simon's own personal views. It's not the views of his current or previous employer. So let's just wanted to make that clear. Let's touch a little bit on Agile and security architecture, because that, I know that's a passion of mine. That's one of the reasons why we connected and set this up. So what in summary, what is your kind of take on Agile and security?
I really like Agile. I think if I look back at programs and projects I've worked on, both in security and outside of security, what we're very good at is delivering an end product, but how do we show incremental value as we're going through that process? And Agile really allows you to do that, whether it's through sort of demos or actually delivering, the sort of MVP and steps to your end product, which adds value all the time. It shows you're delivering. And I think a lot of that visibility of what we do and how security costs money and showing how that money's being spent rather than saying, I'll come back in 6 months and then you'll have this, I think is a really great way to deliver security.
And what in your view is a sort of successful approach to security? Because I've seen many security teams almost try to ignore the Agile methodology and say, no, you've got to go through my gated sort of stage gate process. You've got to do this and the other. And also, what always made me laugh was pen testing, for example. Great example of this. Many places I've worked in my career. You need to do an annual pen test. I'm like, but guys, we're going to make like hundreds of releases a year, and you want to just do an annual pen test. So what's your kind of take on how you kind of adapt the sort of, I suppose, the security methodology to sort of Agile, or is it just kind of maybe the answer? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe it's more getting embedded, I suppose, with the Agile team. What's your sort of take?
So I think there are a number of things, and I suppose to be successful, you've got to know Agile and the people you're delivering. So I was fortunate to work with a company that was wholly Agile. And that was a really good grounding because you had to learn Agile. And then when you understand Agile, you can start to look at where the interaction points are, what's the sort of gating, and there are still gates, but you build it into their life cycle. The other one that always gets a lot of focus is basically not being able to push your own code to production. So that separation of responsibility. But you can build solutions around that. I think it just needs an open mindset and a willingness to learn how people are working, so that you can then see how you can fit that in.
On that topic, actually, pushing things to production, a question I was going to ask you next is, are you a big believer in DevSecOps, or do you think that's just sort of marketing hype? I mean, because I've seen some really nice kind of tool chains and various things, and it looks good in theory, but in reality, have you seen that sort of approach work?
I have. The reason I laugh, and this maybe could get you some interesting responses. I think DevSecOps is a great short-term thing.
Okay.
In terms of a title, but it's really a bit of a badge of failure. Yeah, we don't have
shoehorn it in.
We don't have Dev Resilience Ops or Dev does what the product wants to do. And I think for short term, it's absolutely perfect to focus that, but we've got to embed it into what they're trying to do is embed security into that whole development process. And empower, enable, federate that security into the delivery teams, and provide the tools to do that. And I think that's fantastic. I always think that's CI/CD. I've never worked anywhere yet that is pushing code on a daily, weekly basis. That's always the aspiration, but it's never. I've never quite got there yet. I don't think. I think with the pen testing, there's ways of looking at it. I think it also depends what industry you're in. If you're in a regulated industry and you do PCI, you've not really got a choice. But you can build, everything's a balance.
Yeah. And so going back to kind of Agile then, I mean, I've worked, as I'm sure you have, in a range of different sort of methodologies and styles, from sort of waterfall to strict Scrum, where someone has read the Scrum book and religiously is now trying to implement it, through to kind of, well, we're not really sure what our methodology is, but we kind of just JDI and we kind of get stuff out the door. What's your kind of take on the kind of common mistakes that you've sort of seen, and how have you kind of overcome some of those kind of issues?
With some people, there's a great question at the start of an agile, an engagement, which is what's the end state?
Right.
And if the end state is at the end of MVP 1, we will have an app that allows you to do this. That generally rings the alarm bells. If you say, we're building this app and it's going to do these 20 things, but MVP 1 is going to have 2 of them, that's in a really good place. But if you haven't got that definition of what good looks like at the end, how do you know what your MVP is? How do you know? That to my mind does. That's always a worry, because then what we can't do is look at, from a security perspective, what are the biggest challenges? What do we have answers for? What don't we have answers for? And then we can focus on them. Because I think sometimes in Agile, it's almost like you're wanting to lay the tracks as the train is running. And I don't necessarily think that's bad, but what we've got to be able to do is make sure that the tracks and the train are heading in the same direction. So that's probably the biggest one. One I think that also comes in is knowing how the teams work.
Right.
I had a really interesting experience in one place where I turned up, loads of stuff, sort of brought my ideas. I was going to say great ideas. I don't know whether that sounds a bit. We'll let other people decide that. Put them in PowerPoint. Went, look, this is how we should do this. And then time and time again, it just wasn't landing. And you're thinking, well, what's happened? Converted them to Confluence pages. Brilliant. Everybody consumed them. And it was just that it was just me trying to enforce my way of working onto another team. Whereas actually, I think with security and a lot of architecture, you've got to if you want to be successful, you flex to work the way the work works best with them.
That's probably even more important now. And I'm guessing engagement via collaboration tool is probably even more critical, because it's not like you can just sort of go and wander down the corridor and say, guys, hey, I'm from security. I've come to kind of ask you some pointy questions about the next go live or whatever. You kind of guess you need to be all over the DevOps pipeline and the collaboration sort of tooling, I guess.
Yeah, and having spending time building those relationships with people, and also, so I'm really passionate about security architecture, about working together to find solutions.
Right.
It's not an audit in terms of I'll come in and mark your homework and then leave you with a big stack of these are all the things you need to correct. I mean, even
more small course corrections, perhaps, as the thing's progressing,
or more to the point, sort of from a whole security perspective. I think threat modeling is brilliant.
Okay.
It identifies things that would need to be fixed, but there's a whole culture around it, and when done well, it sort of empowers the teams, and the response you get. So in some ways, threat models are sort of hypothetical pen test.
Right.
But if you look at the difference in response to, you do a threat model, there's a level of ownership within the teams, and you're there to support them doing the threat model, and you're teaching them how to threat model, which changes their security mindset. But also, there's an ownership there that they'll fix the stuff because they're finding out very early in the process. It's much, much better to, they've got time to do something. Whereas turning up with a pen test and going, here's 30 pages of stuff that you need to do, you never get a great response from that. So I think threat modeling has got a huge future in terms of supporting security, and it's really fun.